Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is your buddy Ryan Singer. I'm excited today because we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects with someone who is, I guess we could say, at the least, is very interested in the subject of reincarnation. I have the president of the International Center for Reincarnation Research, KM Wehrstein, with me today. Thanks for joining us today, KM.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me.
First of all, the center is a really excellent, incredible idea, and it makes me wonder because it's not that old of a thing. Someone might think, oh, this sounds like it's an ancient thing. This is something that you started or you came up with the idea for this just a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's right. Actually, the idea, I think I first had the idea going back a little further than that, like perhaps 5 years, but I didn't really get it into action until fall of 2021. So I was inspired by a couple of things that happened around then. And so then it was like gather the people together and start, really making things happen with incorporation and website and all that good organizational stuff that you have to do.
Oh yeah, that is the idea is one thing, and then building everything else around it is a completely another thing, right?
Oh yeah. Yep, it sure is.
Yeah, I mean, and
But
you've
you
got
know what? If you have good people and you have lots of good energy, it's actually a lot of fun. It's
yeah,
it's hard work. It's sometimes nerve-wracking, but it's so enjoyable. If you have something you believe in enough that you want to pursue it that hard. So, and get
I find that to be, truer words probably have not been spoken. I mean, you've assembled quite a group of people, or to be a part of the center, and it's so it's an impressive list, of of researchers, everybody involved. It looks like you did the work, and your love and your excitement for the research has done most of the hard work for you already, just built in. And because you've been interested in researching reincarnation for quite a while, right?
um it depends on what you mean by research. Right? I was introduced to the formal research in 2015, in around 20, or maybe it was late 2014, but 2015, I took a course that was written by James G. Matlock, better known as Jim Matlock. Um, and that's what really got me into the research. I guess I was ready then to get the scientific view. Um, and I was so amazed and impressed by what I learned about just how much evidence there is and how widespread it is, um, how compelling it is if you put it all together. And you do have to put it all together, as people forget that, to put it all together. You can't disprove a little bit of it and that disproves all of it. It doesn't work that way. Um, that I just kind of took off, and next thing I knew, I was investigating cases and writing papers, and then ultimately starting an organization.
I mean, talk
I
about a
actually,
snowball.
I yeah, and I actually now help Jim teach that course. I
Oh, that's
I work
awesome.
with him on that. Yeah, but my interest in reincarnation dates back. Um, I really kind of got hit with it in about the year 2000 when I first had past life memories as an adult. I'm sure that I had them as a child, but that all kind of got lost to me for reasons I don't want to quite get into yet. But so I had experiences and I had some beliefs. I'm not. I actually don't like the word believe. I don't. I like to say I don't believe in anything. I either think something if I'm not sure of it, in which case it's an opinion, or I know something for sure, and then it's fact, right? Belief is 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 it's too much on the fence. It's not either of those things. Um, and I was raised atheist. I was raised atheist and materialist, like absolutely, like there is nothing spiritual, there is nothing imminent. Um, it's just, the world is what you can stub your toe on, and it isn't anything more than that. so I guess I kind of had my doubts about reincarnation science. I'd heard of Ian Stevenson, but didn't know much about his work. He's the father of reincarnation research. He was an amazing scientist, and I could go on and on about him for a while. Imagine 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 40 years. And that's why he got all those cases.
That's amazing.
Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, he was an amazing guy. I wish I could have met him. Um, so apparently around 2014, 2015, I was ready for that. And it just, it strengthened my own faith in myself that I wasn't crazy, that for having past life memories of my own. And it went from there. And I just feel that for something that is addressing questions that are so important to every single person, what is going to happen after I die? We all want to know that. We all want to know that bad. And and uh and that's what reincarnation research is about. That's what we're looking for. It's so important. You have to look at it and wonder, why isn't this getting a lot more funding, right? Where's the government? Where's the educational institutions? Where are the people who realize this is important and have money so they can fund it? And so ICCR, the center, was formed to chase after sources of funding that we haven't really tapped before, that the field hasn't tapped. We live within parapsychology, and parapsychology generally is not well funded. In the last year or two, it's become much more well funded because of a couple of organizations doing some things. And specifically about the idea of postmortem survival, or life after death, as you might call it, because reincarnation evidence is not the only evidence for life after death. There's near death experiences, and there's apparitions and mediumship, and like all kinds of different things. But it just it, 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 it there just needs to be more research. We need to figure it out,
Yeah.
so we all need to know.
It is that it's the I guess there's a reason they say it's the dying question. I'm dying to know. I'm dying to know what
Right.
happens to me after I'm dead.
And everybody will say, I guess I'll find out when I get there. And I'm like, yeah, I want to know now.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have the patience.
It's like, why do you have to wait? Because here's the thing, you're going to find out after you go, but are you going to come back and tell me?
Yeah,
Maybe
I want
not.
to. Yeah,
You
I'm with you on that. I think.
know?
I mean, I've done past life regression, a hypnosis session. I made the mistake of not like of just not being physically super comfortable and
Oh,
just not like really saying it beforehand when I was going under. But I still had what I consider to be a pretty profound experience. But the
okay, good.
I'm interested to know the the overall mission, I guess, of of the center is or how would you boil it down, like if you got all the money tomorrow and everything happened
From your lips to the God's ears.
right, so you got all the money tomorrow. I mean, if I win the Powerball, expect a large check. But
That'll be
the
awesome. Go
and
for it. Good
then
luck.
you you get to achieve everything you want. What does that look like necessarily
Well,
if you if
it's it's actually more than one thing. It kind of grew as we were thinking about it. It started with the idea of just injecting more money into the research field, right? So we would have a pot of money, and more researchers could come to us and ask for more money and do bigger investigations, experiments, so forth. Um, and so there would be a more robust field, and the field would advance. We would get to know more things faster, right? That's science. It takes money. That's just how it goes. You have to pay the scientists, you have to pay for the travel, all that stuff. And so that was one. But then also, okay, so we have these results, then how do we get them out there for people to learn about? So there's a dissemination aspect to it as well, like a, I don't want to say public relations, but getting the word out there, social media, mass media, however we do it. We've got social media going yet. We haven't really hit mass media yet. We don't have quite enough of a news angle quite yet. There's been a few opportunities that came along and then fizzed out. Something's going to happen. It'll happen to get us kicked off. Um, and so there's that, and there's also we want to offer needed resources related to reincarnation for people. Say, for instance, a mom who has a 3-year old who suddenly starts talking about, I remember when I died and got shot down in a plane, maybe having nightmares, maybe having phobias. And who does she run to, right? If she's never heard of Carol Bowman, has never read Children's Past Lives by Carol Bowman, which is the book I would recommend for parents in that situation. So we want to do something that, so maybe not a hotline, but we want to provide resources so that parents in that situation can get some tips, because your parents have a lot of power there. They can shut a child down really easily, just by being disinterested, just by going, oh, well, who cares about that, or you're making up, or that's really creepy, don't talk about it, so on. And they might be denying a child an expression pathway that they need, that the child needs. So there's that, and there's also resources for people who have past lives who want to try to verify them, because there's all kinds of tricks to verify, and there's all kinds of resources and skills that you can use. I was actually going to ask you, this experience you had, did you remember anything factual, and have you ever tried to verify it? Because you
Well,
can tell yourself, well, it's all kind of in my head, and it was all sort of maybe I was imagining it. And then if you run into a fact that you remembered that you couldn't have known any other way, you're kind of like, oh, bam, and it hits you.
yeah, that's interesting. It would have to be some kind of knowledge. I mean, this particular case was well beyond the grasp of being able to confirm. The short and sweet of it was, from what I could tell, I was a goat farmer. I was alone by myself, like in a shack, I think somewhere in the Middle East. And I had one goat left and it was dying. And I looked at it as it was dying and knew that the death of that goat meant the death of me. And I
Oh
remember just
wow.
kind of like
Oh.
laying on like a wooden bench, laying down to die. Um, so there's no real way to be like, oh, I could go. That one's a hard one to go confirm. Um,
Yeah. You don't
with
even,
boots on
because
the
you don't
ground.
even know the era, that the era could be any time.
Yeah,
Did you
exactly.
see anything like landscape around you or anything like that?
Yeah, it was mountainous and desert and like sand. And it was pretty barren where I
No
was.
other people?
I didn't see in this and I didn't see another person in this. I just remember being overwhelmed with sadness and for the first time having a sense of the end of my life, like actually like having a pretty profound like this is the end of my life moment. Um and kind of like going through like wow, this is how you accept physical death. Um
Hmm.
in the moment. And so, I remember I was crying and or it made me teary and it was sad, but it also had a tinge of, you know, it's okay. It wasn't
Yeah. Yep.
fully like, oh my God, I'm dying. No, it was just kind of like, oh, this was it. This is the end of this one. Um,
Well, that's interesting that you put it that way. This is the end of this one.
yeah. And, it is, I mean, I was raised the opposite. I was raised in a very like Catholic family, and mostly my grandparents. The
Mhm.
immediate home was my parents were they were Catholic, but we went to church on Sundays. But as soon as we were old enough to like not be able to make us go, we kind of stopped, right? But my grandparents, on the other hand, very very Catholic, specifically one side, very mystical in their
Mm,
Catholicism.
okay.
So I had a blueprint of like the mystical and believing in miracles and all that kind of stuff. But the older I got, the more I realized, like, oh, I really do, for whatever reason, reincarnation resonates with me deeply, and I became very interested in it. And it's funny because I do stand up comedy as my living, but I have a joke on my special I just put out about how I love reincarnation because it's sustainable. I'm into sustainability, right? Like reuse, recycle, reincarnate, right?
Yeah,
And
that's good.
and it's funny because I didn't realize, maybe just how, I mean, that is, I guess, it's a pretty big tenet of reincarnation here. Specifically when we're talking about, the planet we're living on. And I know you go into some detail about this on the website. And I think that is one of the big issues about reincarnation, right?
Well, we were approached by a fellow by the name of Michael Smith, who's from Australia. He's from Canberra, and he is a world class climate change scientist. And, it's sort of like, like seriously, really up there, like writing reports that governments around the world will read. Because they came up with a way, he, I guess, working with some other people, came up with a way in Canberra, in the city of Canberra, they reduced greenhouse emissions, I believe, if I'm getting this right, 60% in 2 years. And
Oh,
so
wow.
it's like, a lot of other people in the world would love to know how they did that. And so he's been disseminating. But he approached us saying, you know, well, first of all, humanity has to have a an emotional, spiritual transformation. We need that to offset climate change because we won't convince ourselves enough if we don't. And he said reincarnation is so important because people need to realize that they might be coming back here, right? It's like, do you want to come back to hothouse Earth, right? This awful, barren, stormy place. You are trying to save human habitat for future generations. You are the future generations. We are the future generations. We all are. And so he's been helping us out, helping us publicize and so on, because of that, because he sees how important it is. And actually, somebody did a study. I believe I cited it on the splash page, the front page of our website, um, showing that people who believe in reincarnation actually live in a more environmentally friendly way. Like they're uh, they're walking their talk, so to speak. So yeah, it's I mean, we need to understand ourselves as part of nature. We're not stewards of nature. We aren't qualified to do that. Look what a rotten job we've done as stewards, stewards of nature. It's kind of like we don't want to take care of it. We want to boss it around and exploit it, and that's not going to work for us. And so it becomes part of a whole. I This is using a cliche from a musical, circle of life thing, right? And I can seeing reincarnation as part of that, right? You think generations in advance because that's going to be you there. And we will have to live with, you made your bed, you lie in it, right? You made your habitat and you lie in it. So yeah, that's part of the message for sure. That is
Yeah,
part of the message.
and it it makes sense when you think this whole thing out logically too. It makes total sense that it's a big part of it. And this, yeah, I agree with you about the steward of nature thing. I mean, it's funny how, I mean, sometimes I'll just think, be like, wow, I mean, we're judging people on how much they control nature to some degree too. Is like, is your lawn perfectly kept? Are you keeping nature
Mine's not.
perfectly? Right?
I'd like to say proudly that I do not mow my lawn.
Yeah.
I let it grow up. I live
Yeah.
on 30 acres of bush here
Oh, wow. That's great.
in
Um,
Muskoka. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it's one of those things where if you aren't, if like when you see like a perfectly trained animal, that doesn't need to be on leash or anything else, it's like, are you doing that with nature as well? Is your lawn perfectly trimmed and trained? And like the fact that we make it so built in, I guess is what I'm getting at. The idea of controlling nature, bossing it around, is so built into the way we go about our lives, or our perceptions of certain things, that I think, you know he's right. There needs to be a spirit. I've never thought of it that way. There needs to be a spiritual and emotional change about the way we think about climate change. And
And the way we think about what we consume, what we produce, how we interact with the outside world. Do we want to dump garbage on it, or do we want to, compost or recycle? And you know, I it must have been frustrating for people, indigenous people, First Nations people, to look at the white attitude and think like, don't you guys get it? Like, you have an impact on the land. You think that's not going to come back to bite you? So
yeah, and it's whenever I see, and thankfully you don't see it nearly as much. I live in Los Angeles, so unfortunately I do see it every once in a while because there's just 11 million people here. But when someone throws trash out their window while they're driving, which to me is crazy that anyone would still think to do that. But like, I always think to myself, would you do that walking through your living room? Like, this person wouldn't. Chances
just
are this
dump it on
person,
somebody else. Yeah, just
yeah,
dump it on
right.
somebody else.
They wouldn't just throw this bag or this cup out on their living room floor as they're walking from the kitchen to the bedroom or something, right? So to me, it's like it's the same idea. I do want to take a quick break here real quick for some commercials, but when we come back, there's a lot more to get into.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so just a reminder for you can go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer. You can get all these interviews ad free. So if you're looking for no ads, go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer. Do the $3 a month, $3 a month. That's cheap. That's like half of a delicious coffee at Starbucks. At least what I'll pay for a venti iced coffee with all kinds of additives, oat milk and everything else. That's like $6. So yeah, go do that. And then when we come back, we're going to talk more with KM Wehrstein of the International Center for Reincarnation Research. And we are back. So we're keeping the lights on over here. So I'm talking with KM here about everything reincarnation and the impact it has on the future for ourselves, and not only ourselves but for the earth. And there's I'm firmly entrenched in the woo woo world. Okay, like I'm I've been doing this podcast for over 9 years. I've had some really fascinating paranormal experiences. I do paranormal research. um I know at least a few people who, when it comes to reincarnation, are not earthbound by their definition of what is possible and reincarnated, and their past or future reincarnations. Now, I guess I am curious. Does the center get into all that, or are we pretty Earth centric here? We think everything's human, or we're going to just keep being humans?
Well, okay, that's getting pretty theoretical. Um,
Yeah, this is a woo woo alert. There's a woo woo
it's a
alert.
woo woo alert, and I am so not a woo woo person, right? Like I was raised, you know how I was raised. I told you, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I am personally convinced, which is to say, I think, I don't believe, I think that reincarnation is a genuine natural phenomenon. It is just part of life. Um, when it comes to other species, well, as I said, I'm convinced, and I'm also data driven, which is to say, I'm looking at the body of cases that have been investigated by researchers. Um, and there's a collection of 2,500 roughly, with Division of Perceptual Studies, which is the department that Dr. Stevenson was running before he went on to his next adventure, whatever that is. Um, and and there's more cases than that that are out there because there are other researchers. So when you look at those, then you look for, how much talk is there from these children? It's mostly children, not all children, mostly. How much do they talk about being on other planets? How much do they talk about being other species? How much do they talk about? I remember I was in Atlantis, and the answer to that is not a lot. There's one case I can think of where a child had a story of having been a snake that was apparently somewhat verified. Like he could remember, he said, I remember this man killed me. And the man said, yeah, I did kill a snake. But maybe it's folkloric and it's all by itself, right? There's only one. Um, Other planets, kind of hard to verify. I had somebody on Facebook, I think, ask me about that. Like, how could that ever be verified? And I said, well, you'd have to remember living on a part of the earth, or not the earth, sorry, get extraterrestrial here, on another planet, on a side that doesn't face the earth. There's some kind of formation that you remember from that life, and a probe passes it and gets a shot of it, verified, right? Could happen, could happen, hasn't yet. So we don't know. Um, what seems to be reported the most in these cases when they get investigated is other human lives. And with the vast majority of the children, they only remember one. They only remember the previous one, or the previous but one. Um, some of them remember more. I've got a couple of adult cases of people remembering series of lives, who have good verifications for at least some of them. And it's all human. And in fact, even within the human species, from the data, what it seems to show is that people don't wander around too much when they reincarnate. They mostly stay, I think the average is like 25 kilometers that they'll
Wow.
move. Some
Uh,
stay in the same family. It's a really common thing in the West. Um, and the international cases where, people cross oceans and such, which they do, there's always some kind of reason, and you can figure it out if it's a well, say some example would be James Laniger, which is he's a young man, a very very famous case, maybe most famous American case. Do you remember who I'm talking about? He was shot down in his previous life. He was shot down in a plane during the Iwo Jima battle,
yes.
and
This is yeah.
so he
This
died there. He died close to in Japanese water, or well, I guess it was under dispute at that point, but close to Japan. Um, and reincarnated in so it was either New Orleans or California. No, I can't remember. But in the States, he wanted to come home. He was American, right? So there, the reason is obvious. He wanted to come home, and I've seen that with a couple of other soldier cases. Um, and I could go on. There's you can generally find a reason when it's an international case.
That's interesting. And I mean, first of all, I'd like to applaud you. Very diplomatic answer to the woo woo alert question that came at you. The woo woo siren was going off.
That's no problem.
The
Some of
um
my best friends are woo woos.
yeah, it's funny because when it comes to the idea of wrapping one's brain around reincarnation, it's not that hard of a concept on paper to be like, oh, you die and then you're reborn, right? But when it comes to actually embracing the idea of what it means for so many people in the West, because of the way, only because of the way we were raised, and because of the predominant, one life culture that we've been raised in, it becomes difficult. And so I think before, it's almost like we need to learn how to walk in our next life before we run. When it comes to, I think staying focused on, the data, what's verifiable, and what can be shown, and because the evidence is there for reincarnation, and
It
you and I
is.
both
It is big
know
time.
that. And the um I'm curious though, is it doesn't mean I'm and these are nuanced questions, but like it doesn't mean you have to come back. Potential, maybe, who knows.
Well, here's the trick about that answering that question. We can't ask the people who've decided not to come back.
Yeah, yeah.
At least, I mean, unless we can contact them mediumistically,
Yes.
right? Like, we're not gonna, they're not gonna be kids talking about past life memories. They all came back.
Yeah, and I mean that is one of the most fascinating things. I think when anyone first starts looking into reincarnation, the thing that really stands out, and it is a foundational aspect of the research and the studies and the evidence, are the child cases.
Mm.
And it's overwhelming. And I think a lot of people who have looked into it even a little bit recognize the name Dr. Stevenson because of that. And it is really profound. I remember the first time I remember hearing about the birthmarks in the way of death. And I what I didn't realize was the amount of evidence and research that goes into trying to pull that thread and prove that aspect.
Well, if you want to talk about birthmarks, um, people in the West aren't really aware of that whole aspect. In the East, they are. They know all about it, right? Because it happens all the time. Um, but in the West, it was Stevenson, and he actually kind of had trouble with it himself at first. That hit his boggle threshold. The boggle threshold, right? It's where your mind boggles. It's like, oh, this is like maybe more than I can handle. This is
Is
too
that a
woo
reference to the game with the little bum with the dice in the bubble on the boggle?
woo. I don't think so. I think it's from my mind boggles,
Oh,
right?
okay. The
This
game's
it,
named
it
after the
is.
word, obviously. I don't know. It's not like the game started that word boggle. Okay, got it. I had a boggle. I was boggled there for a second.
That's no problem. Boggles happen all the time. So, so I have to say this is the first time I've been interviewed by a comedian. It's pretty cool. I'm going to ask you
Oh,
for more reincarnation jokes. I want more reincarnation
oh,
jokes.
okay. I've got a few.
Okay, great. Uh, when we're finished the serious stuff, maybe we can get into that. Anyway, so birthmarks. So yeah, he started investigating these cases in India. I believe that's the first place he went to. He thought he'd find a handful, and a whole bunch of them were dumped on his lap. Oh, I know about this person, and I know about that. And here's this newspaper article, and so on, right? And he found that a lot of them feature birthmarks that corresponded with past life injuries or wounds. They'd be in the same place, and they'd be raised. They look kind of like scars. And he did struggle with that at first, but he was a great scientist. He followed the data. It's like, yeah, this is what I'm seeing. I got to go with it. And so he wrote this massive, massive work. It's 2 books in 2,200 pages about birthmarks and other physical features of reincarnation cases and malformations and so on. It's got more than 200 cases. I think it's 260 odd cases in it. Ranging from little tiny ones to, the nice big ones that have lots of details. And a few other topics are in there as well. And it's just, I mean, it's overwhelming. And it's from all over the world. It's not just, there's this misconception out there that reincarnation cases are all found in India or out east anyway. No, there's lots of American cases with birthmarks. There's European. They come from all over. The most reincarnationist society in terms of its social customs and so forth is uh, is a First Nations tribe in the Pacific Northwest, in my opinion, the Tlingit, because it used to be worked right into their social cultures. And they're traditionally, of course, they got Christianized and got hit with missionaries and all that, right? And so it's fading out, sadly. But um now where was I going with this? Birthmarks. Well, the point is he wrote this huge book because he just felt like this is such an important aspect. It's so I mean, it's a kind of objective evidence because, this isn't anybody remembering something that they might be, distorting or enhancing or anything. It's a physical mark and it's on a physical body and it matches the physical records, medical, autopsy, whatever, from the previous incarnation. And there it is.
Yeah.
So so he so that's important. It's an important part. It's something you look for if you're researching. And I had people who I've been working on their case, and the guy, he has a kind of a limp, and the limp gets more so when he talks about his past life in which he took a gunshot wound to the leg, and he had never connected that. Right, he'd never thought that it might be related. I'm like, yeah, well, it could be,
Yeah.
because you see this all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's so fascinating because we all know that something that happened to us a week ago can affect our mood and can, or like something we experienced, and that creates a thought or a feeling or an emotion or even an injury. It can affect the way we walk, or it can just affect the way we go about doing things, whether we're afraid of. I'm like, I don't love heights. um I get up too high and close to an edge, and I think it's probably just a normal, like, oh, this is your body wanting to stay alive, don't get closer to the edge here. But so it's, for me, it's not a big jump to think that you know we we also have these things that we've experienced previously that can, and if they were profound enough, can have a big effect on the way we go about our business here in this current iteration. And to me, it makes sense. Now, uh, I'm guessing it probably would have to be something a little profound, to travel, to traverse lifespans, to carry over. Yeah, but it is, it's fun to think about. I mean, I always think about too, like, you see the lizards who hatch from the eggs underneath the sand on the beach, and they instinctually, they know to go towards the water, or the turtles, I should say, to get away from the snakes that are waiting for them. And so there's like this genetic knowledge that they have built into their DNA. And human beings, we have the same thing. And then generational trauma has been something that is, um, really starting to be talked about in the last
Mhm.
five
It's
years or so.
epigenetics and so, yeah.
Yeah. And so what ties more directly into generational trauma than trauma you experienced previously in another generation as a different form of yourself, right?
Well, that's well, okay. I mean, strictly generational. If you want to think of it as generational without reincarnation being involved in it, the whatever it is gets passed down from one person to another,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
For one person to their descendant. Now, I'm my own grandpa happens in reincarnation frequently. Like people
Yeah,
will come
yes.
back as their grandkids, right? And and actually Stevenson and a lot of the other researchers would avoid that kind of case, avoid same family cases because they wanted to make sure the information wasn't getting passed down in family history, right? It's like, oh, maybe
Oh,
the kid
okay.
knows this because Auntie so and so talked about it, or there was a photo or something, right? Um, so it's a different thing if it was you in a past life, it was you. If you can remember it as a as a as a first person narrative, if you can relive it, if it has that sense of yeah, that really happened and it happened to me, and if you verify it, um, then that's you who was back there. And actually the reincarnation sage who I like to quote, who put that most succinctly, was General George Patton, who was a big believer in reincarnation and apparently had a bunch of past life memories. He wrote a poem about it, which, if you look at it as reincarnation research, it's like, yeah, it has the right kind of feel. It's like, and and he talks about how he fought in all these battles, and the line is many names, but always me.
Hmm.
And I quote that to people all the time because it says it so well, right? You change names, you have this name, you have that name, you're John, you're Jane, you're Joe, right? Da, 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 but always me, right? Like there's always that subjective existence if you remember.
Yeah.
Um, so what happens with things like phobias, and phobias are maybe the most kind of marked kind of behavioral thing we see. Um, there's one case of a guy who committed suicide by drinking poisonous stuff that was in a red liquid, it was a juice or stuff, I can't remember. Um, and so he killed himself that way. And in his next life, he was afraid of red liquids,
Hmm.
right? So it can be very specific like that, the same way a phobia can if it's in the same life. Like all these things have the same after effects as if you experienced it. And actually, I'll let you in on something. I just put in an application to a prize competition for designing an experiment that addresses the question of is mind um, does mind precede brain? Is it outside brain and just inhabits brain now and then? Or is it produced by brain, which is the materialistic and conventional Western view, right? Um, and the experiment is about PTSD. Now, I personally know two people who have diagnosable PTSD caused by past life trauma. I'm convinced, right? From the verifications, from the memory, from the amount of detail, and so on. I've written up one of them. I'm going to write up the other. And and PTSD makes certain it produces both functional and anatomical markers. Produces or is correlated with, because some people would say, well, because the brain's a little bit different, that's what causes it. Maybe, but it's there. Um, and so the experiment is to test for that using neuroimaging in people who have PTSD, but no trauma in this life that would have produced it, but they can relate it to a trauma in a past life. So fingers are crossed.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. And
Yeah.
it is, oh, yeah, it's so wild to think about being able to have these ideas. I definitely would identify as an idealist,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a materialist. And because I do,
You
I'm
think you
not.
need to explain to your listeners what that is?
I talk a little bit about it on the show, but in case someone's listening for the first time, I think it probably is important that, you know, and I'm still learning. I'm still at the beginning stages of, my idealistic understanding, and I'm not a huge proponent of like having to have like George Berkeley would have the God mind, making sure everything is still like that's why there's regularity in our perception of all these. Like my room is the same every time I'm in here. Why would my perception, if consciousness essentially is the way I boil it down, is the foundation, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking and perception over material in the material world is a result of that, as
Right.
opposed to.
Consciousness precedes matter. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a much more succinct way to say it. And as opposed to, we still don't really know how consciousness emanates from this physical brain, concept that we still
We
haven't
can't
wrapped
figure
our.
out why we can't figure it out. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like thinking about consciousness blows my mind. It's a loop you can kind of get into. But now I forget what I was talking about. Oh, we were talking about the experiment, being able to measure this. And that is, finding these ways and these codes, or not codes, but I don't even want to say they're tricks, but just techniques, and getting closer to the truth. And even if it doesn't work, we still, what is it, Einstein was like, now I know 5,000 different ways not to make a, or whatever. Like we now know that doesn't work, so now we're closer to the truth, because now we don't have to waste our time doing this thing that didn't work previously. But um I'm curious about what it would take for you to be like, I got the answer, I got what I was looking for, I know it now. Like what would it take for that for you? Because
Well,
I mean, that's what you want to know, right?
that's such a good question because earlier you were talking about how for a Westerner it's a struggle, and I see that as a journey. It's like you go from having this vague feeling, well, maybe, and when I took the course, I thought I was 100%. I thought, yep, I'm 100%. I'm sure that reincarnation happens. That's the truth of it. And then I took the course, and I got amazed so many times that I realized, no, actually, I wasn't 100%, right? Because I wouldn't be amazed. If I were 100%, I would be going, oh yeah, well, of course that happens, right? But I kept being amazed, and so then it was like, okay, I'm 100% at the end of the course, and I'm not even sure I am 100% yet. Um, maybe 98, 99.
Still a little
And
room for
so,
amazement in there.
well, when especially when it's your own experience, it's so amazing. You just, I mean, I have this weight of this materialistic upbringing, right? And okay, I'll get a little personal here. When I was a kid, I drew a lot of pictures, hundreds of them, of pre-firearms battles that were realistic, which is to say they were gruesome. I was doing this when I was 3, 4 years old. And now, if I had a kid who did that, I would say, oh, what's this picture about? Who's that? Are you in there? Right? That's not what my mother did. My mother destroyed them all. She took them away from me. She destroyed them all. And she um, basically taught me that I was crazy. And so there's that, there's that weight, like it's an emotional, and I mean, most people don't get hit with uh anti-reincarnationism, if you want to call it that, quite as hard as I did. But we still get, I mean, it's like, well, there's, your science class, you get taught that it's this, and it's, if anyone talks about anything non-conventional, it's like woo woo, There's a certain contempt. Um, Mental health gets brought into it. Are you crazy to believe that? Um, so, it, so if you're asking me, what would it take for me to know for sure? I'm gonna say with reincarnation generally, I think I'm there. Even though technically, as the president of ICRR, I kind of shouldn't be because we're supposed to be scientific and still investigating, you know. But I mean, from everything I've seen, right? Um, Believing 100% in my own past lives, I still need more. I still need more. And what would that be? Probably a big collection of memories that I could verify.
Yeah.
And I have some. I have some. And maybe it's mostly the emotional thing that's in my way. I keep working on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's in this world, now granted, I'm not an expert in any shape or fashion when it comes to reincarnation, but there's interesting ideas, and these ideas are slowly built up, almost like you see the large cranes in cities building a skyscraper, and over time the skyscraper of this idea of what reincarnation is, at least here in the West, is slowly being built up. And I can think of Many Lives Many Masters as probably one of the big cranes that have been building the idea that reincarnation is possible for people, written by Dr. Brian Weiss in his past life hypnosis sessions. um, I'm just not sure if, like, when it comes to doing the scientific research and funding the researchers, are we focused on just recollections of people in that way, or is there, I guess the question is, where do you stand on the past life hypnosis as a reliable technique for ascertaining information about past lives scientifically?
Um, Very simply, bottom line is verification. So, if you come to me and say, I've got the spontaneous case and this happened, I'm gonna say, well, have you verified any of it? Because if there's enough of it, there's a way to verify it. There's something that is going to fit with something. And that's true even of lives in ancient times. You'd be surprised. Actually, you'd be surprised how much you can verify. It's almost impossible to get anybody's identity, but you can get the verifications that show that you were there, that place you there. Um, and that for me, it's like if you have a spontaneous case, if you have a regression case, I don't care how you got the information. The question is whether it checks out. And, so, I mean, if you are asking me whether regression is a 100% fail safe, foolproof way of finding out about your past lives, I'm going to say no, because there's no foolproof, fail safe way. um, I think the danger with regression is that you can be influenced by the person who's doing the hypnosis. That's the and the thing is that I also think that if a person is not psychologically ready, emotionally ready to remember a past life, then regression is not going to find it. Like if their subconscious is like, nope, nope, we're not doing this yet, it will produce what they call screen memories, which is a term that comes kind of from mainstream psychology, that are covering up something deeper. And that's what'll come out and it won't check out, right? Um, so there's a few possible pitfalls there. But I mean there's pitfalls with everything, right? There's you can a person can be deluded even if they don't get regressed. In fact, Stevenson actually wrote a paper about that. I think that he had been criticized for not addressing the idea of fraud or self-deception. And so he wrote a paper about deception. It's called Deception and Self-Deception in Reincarnation Cases. I believe that's what it's called. fascinating paper. He's got 7 cases, and one of them was a reporter doing a fraud. And one of them was um, there's a guy in Turkey whose son, he somehow got into his head that his son was the reincarnation of JFK, John F. Kennedy, and so he actually named him Kennedy. Kennedy Alcan is the name of this kid, and taught him to believe that he'd been JFK. But there were things, like he never had any clear memories, and somebody caught him studying a book on JFK, and
Hmm.
you know it was kind of obvious that it was bogus, right? um so I mean, I don't tell people, don't get regressed, it's going to be really bad for you. I can't say that. There are some people who do get good results. There are some regression cases um that do have verifications. They well, I'm going to say they tend not to identify the person, but that's true of spontaneous ones too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. With adults, it's for some reason it's easier for kids to get names, and I think that has to do with they haven't been taught that this isn't possible yet. And so I'll just go back to what I said at the start. The bottom line is verification.
Yeah.
If you can somehow confirm what you got. I was going to ask you, how do you feel about goats?
Oh, ghosts.
Goats.
Uh, oh, goats.
Yeah.
I this is I don't know how this is weird that it ties in, but it was about a year and a half ago. I was at a comedy club in Illinois, and the owner had quote unquote rescued a goat from a neighbor's property, and um, this goat was huge and had huge horns, and uh, I was pretty nervous around it, just because he's like, "Do you want to see my goat?" And I was like, "Okay." So I thought I was going to go see this little goat, and this thing was probably on all fours, was probably 4.5 feet tall. I mean, it was a
Really? I didn't think they
huge.
got that big.
I mean, it was. I mean, I'm. Yeah, I mean, I almost felt like this was like a ram, more than a goat, but it was a goat, and I mean, he was feeding the hell out of it. So I mean, this thing was healthy and big and strong, and or maybe 3.5 feet tall, maybe not 4.5, but yeah, not 4.5, maybe like 3.5 feet tall. But it was huge. And then at one point, it wanted to like jump up on me, like a dog will put its
Like a
paws,
dog.
and
Oh my.
I started, and it had these horns on its head, and so I had a little. It was like, this thing is too powerful for me to just hang around with right now. Um, so I wasn't super comfortable around it, which is, if I was in fact a goat herder, I'm probably pretty comfortable around. Well, one might think anyway.
Well, yeah, but yours might have been small,
Yeah, little.
right? Like the one you remember dying. How big was?
It was tiny. It was dying because it was tiny and malnourished, much like myself, I suppose. In that, yeah, it was kind of like we're out. We ran out of food and everything, kind of moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but well, this has been fun. Cam, thanks, sir. I'm going to leave you with one more. I'm not going to do the whole bit for people, but one of the main reasons I believe in reincarnation, this is another joke, is because every morning when I wake up, my brain wants to do all the things that I know will kill me, right? Like all the bad stuff. And so, and scientists will tell us that we are driven by the survival instinct, first and foremost, controls all of our actions on a subconscious level. We don't even realize it sometimes. So why would my brain, who only cares about surviving, also only want to do all the things it knows will kill me if it didn't already know that we never really die? You know what I mean? So it's like my brain is smarter than me, if that makes sense. Um, and there's some more details and things like that in
But
it,
that
but
that wasn't funny. That was just profound. Profound.
well, yeah. Well, some people might argue that my comedy is definitely a little off the beaten path for some people. That's for sure. Um, I mean, there's details in there that I left out. I didn't want, I didn't go into, but about carbs and drugs and all this other stuff, but and
All the
sugar.
stuff that'll kill you. Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that'll kill you. I mean, basically, the joke opens up like, why? How come every morning when if I only care about living, why every morning when I wake up do I want to do all of the cocaine in the world? It's like, it's like, it's like that will kill you if you do that. But yeah. So Cam, this has been fun. Um, let's let
I
people
agree.
know.
Thank you.
Let's let people know where they can go. It's the reincarnationcenter.org, and that's CENTRE dot
RE.
org.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not the American way of spelling it. And that's the website where you actually, I think there's still time left to, if you want to be a donor and a member, correct?
What time left on people will be able to join in perpetuity and donate in perpetuity. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I saw a
Yeah.
March 28th deadline for something on here on the.
March 28th deadline for something. Oh, I know what that's for. No, that's nothing to do with donating or joining. That is actually when we have to complete our bylaws to fit in with the Canadian not-for-profit incorporation law,
Oh,
because
got
we
it.
incorporated in on March 28th, 2022. So you have a year, and it's cool though because the Canadian government has this software called Bylaw Builder. So you kind of plug into it what you want, and it spits out this legal language, your bylaws. So I'm actually looking forward to doing that.
Okay, cool.
You don't have to hire a lawyer.
Oh, very nice. So you
So,
can become a founding member. Yeah, is what it says. $50 gets you membership
oh,
as
okay, yes, that's true.
ICRR
You can
founder.
only become a founding member in the first year that we have membership open, and then we're going to change the membership system. And only founding members will be able to brag that they were founding members and they were with us from the start.
Oh, hell yeah. So go,
So,
you can check that out on reincarnationcenter.org/join dash us. You can find the website is really easy to navigate. Um, so
oh,
it's
we're gonna upgrade it soon.
cool. Cool.
Gonna
Is
be
now,
it's just gonna have more stuff on it.
oh, excellent. So it's going to be a great center for resources, it sounds like.
That's the plan. We want to build like the best one-stop shop for reincarnation resources on the net. That's our ambition.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Well, you're
Movies,
on your,
books,
well,
songs, whatever.
you're on your way there. The anything else you want to leave people with before we say goodbye?
Um, check us out. But you've already said that. Um, I would love to come back in the future and talk about more things because there are more things that I could say.
Yeah, no,
If
100%.
that's okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry I'm inviting myself, but
No, I
you can
love
say
this
no.
idea. I'm going to become a founding member of ICRR
Okay,
later today. And then,
cool. Thank
so
you.
as a founding member, I would appreciate if the president would come on and, answer some questions I've got about the organization that I'm a founder of.
Bet.
Specifically, maybe we can get into some of your favorite cases too.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and
Oh
things like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
uh,
I was gonna talk about, or was going to. I know we don't have all day. But I want to talk about how people think that reincarnation originated in India, whereas in fact it originated worldwide, all over the world. And I wanted to talk about how prevalent it is in the States, apparently, and in Japan for kids to talk about a past life. How many of them do?
okay. Okay.
I'll
Yeah. Well,
tease you with that.
okay. Well, great. Well, we'll have to do this talk sometime in the near future then. Do a
That'd
follow up.
be awesome.
Okay. Awesome.
That'd be
Well,
awesome.
Cam,
Thank you so much.
thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. This was really fun and look forward to our next chat.
Okay.